How did we go off the air?
I don't know.
We went off the air, so this whole thing is not going to happen?
It's being recorded on the video camera, and it may still be recorded on...
When did we go off the air?
I don't know, I noticed about 7 minutes ago.
We have 2 guests. Find out who they are.
And we're back. And are we back live? Okay, I'm not going to interrupt the show. It's showing up. So,
what did you just say? I'm sorry. I got distracted.
Deuteronomy chapter 6, verse 7, you shall teach them diligently to your children.
And from that we learned that I don't need to actually reproduce.
Yeah, your students are considered your
everyone
children.
who watches the show.
Right.
Everyone who watches the show and sends money.
Right.
I get credit for having kids, so be sure to send your money. Go ahead.
Exactly.
Give me the mitzvah of having kids.
Okay, so I'm going through Deuteronomy chapter 6 here. It's part of this week's Torah portion. It's a very rich Torah portion. We've got a recapitulation of the 10 Commandments. We've got the Shema in here. And we've got an injunction, you shall do what is fair and good in the eyes of God, so that it will be good for you. And you shall come and possess the good land that God swore to your forefathers to thrust away all your enemies before you. So the outscroll stone Chumash on what is good and fair. A person who has total faith in God will not hesitate to deal generously with opponents, for he knows that God will see to it that he gets what he is entitled to one way or another. What is fair? Litigation, you should agree to arbitration and compromise. Be willing to be generous to your opponent by not asserting the full extent of your rights. This is Rashi. Thus, after exhausting Israel to keep the commandments scrupulously, Moshe told them that the rest of their actions, specifically their dealings with people, should be guided by a sense of what is fair and good in God's eyes. How to do so in any given situation depends on the sensitivity and stature of the individual. But it is impossible to spell out all alternatives and situations in the Torah. General guidelines must be gleaned from the Torah's requirements to show compassion and forbearance to others, such as not taking revenge or cursing, showing respect to the learned and aged, and not being apathetic to the danger or financial losses threatening others. In other words, it's very hard to legislate ethics, because there are so many different ethical situations, and they're infinitely complex. It's much easier to legislate, okay, you say the Shema at this time, you put on tefillin between this time and this time, you're allowed to eat this and not eat this. But when it comes to ethics, the way, like, say, the rabbi and I speak to each other, it's pretty complicated. And there are some guidelines, things we should do and not do, but there are like so many competing values that can get very complicated. It's a lot like journalistic ethics. Like journalistic ethics, I'm not sure how useful they are, because the journalist has so many competing obligations that, first of all, just think about this. When you have a set of ethical standards for a profession, to whom are you obligated? So take the journalist. To whom is he primarily obligated? Is he primarily obligated to his boss? Is he primarily obligated to his profession? Is he primarily obligated to his readers? Or is he primarily obligated to the people he writes about? Or is he primarily obligated to his sources? There are so many different sources of obligation for a journalist that journalistic ethics are very complicated. Sure, you can put down some precepts, don't steal other people's words without attribution, don't make stuff up. But generally... 2 sources. Yeah, generally speaking, like journalistic ethics are not a big help, because the journalist has so many different competing ethical questions, and so too does the ordinary person in daily life. Like if you go visit your mother, you might neglect your wife and your kids, or your wife, your obligations to your shul. So that's why it's hard to write out an ethical code, and that's why most of the prescriptions of the Torah are ritual or behavioral between like the individual and God, the individual and community, rather than like primarily ethical. Moshe accepts that his prayers will go unanswered. We all have prayers that will go unanswered. For instance, I'll never get to date Heidi Klum or Halle Berry.
You don't know that.
I think I do.
What if Heidi Klum
was watching Torah Talks right now?
Yeah, and then she decided like she wants to be this from Jew and the whole thing, right?
Right.
Comes over here, goes through the whole thing, and then contacts you.
Well, then I'll say my prayers have been answered, but really my prayers were for a young Heidi Klum.
Still not good enough, is it? That's
Like,
your problem.
Because when she was in her prime, like now she's, must be 40 years old. So,
See, look at this. See, it recorded something.
yeah, we're not going to...
It just got butchered. It got butchered. Something happened. You hiccuped completely.
Okay, so after Tisha B'Av, which starts tonight,
Right.
it's 25 hours. After that, we enter...
I'm going to the restroom this time.
Go ahead. We enter 7 weeks of consolation leading up to Rosh Hashanah. So Judaism has this profound rhythm of affliction and consolation where you afflict yourself, say on Tisha B'Av, on Yom Kippur, on the weeks leading up to Tisha B'Av. Not supposed to listen to music 3 weeks, or to party, or to wear clean clothes, or to bathe in hot water, or to eat meat. So I found as a convert to Judaism that there's this profound rhythm of life that comes with observing Torah. So the day has a rhythm. You get up early, put on tefillin, you go to synagogue, you study some Torah, you come home, you engage in the tasks of the day, and then as the sun's setting, you again have to specially orient yourself to God. Say the afternoon prayer of Mincha, the evening prayer of Ma'ariv, preferably done at a synagogue with a minyan, a quorum of 10 men. So the day has this rhythm, the week has a rhythm with the Sabbath and the 6 ordinary days. And then the yearly calendar has a rhythm. For instance, as the summer gets hotter in July and early August, Judaism gets sadder, and you have these fast days, and you have the 3 weeks leading up to Tisha B'Av, which is a time of extra restriction, the 9 days where you have even more restrictions leading up to Tisha B'Av. Then as you come out of Tisha B'Av, you have 7 weeks of consolation where you can just do anything you want. Well, not quite.
Whoop.
So,
hey, I'm just you just keep talking. You know what I want to do? I just want to hit record anyway.
No,
start practice.
No.
This is why. So if people show up now, they can still watch live. Now you don't have to hit start record, but just start broadcast.
Okay.
So that they see it and they come over and they see. Okay.
Okay, nobody is indispensable, not even Moshe. Moshe is like pleading with God, oh, let me into the promised land, I'm Moshe Rabbeinu. You need me, but nobody's indispensable. So if Moshe Rabbeinu, Moses, is not indispensable, how much more so am I not indispensable, and the Rabs is not indispensable? Nobody's indispensable.
I'm completely dispensable. Is that the word?
Exactly.
Except, you know what though? If I go after I go,
mm-hmm.
I can't imagine anybody continuing the kind of campaigns that I've.
Thank God.
You think that's a thank God? I mean, who else is going to stand up and say, the frum community doesn't understand cycle abuse and sell that to them? You know what I mean? Who else? I've never heard a voice that's done that. So like, who else is going to be there doing that? Who's going to beat that drum?
Who else is going to?
Who's going to stand up and be the next
take away
Rabbi
the
Rabs?
shame for people who are, who are turned on by incest porn? Who else is going to
Is that going to be my new taboo?
Who else is going to speak for them? Who else is going to lead them? Who else is going to try to take away their shame? Take them out of the closet and bring them into the light of the promised land? But Rabbi Rabs.
Whatever. All right, keep going.
So this week's Torah portion repeats the Ten Commandments. Does this new version of the Ten Commandments allow for driving on Shabbat?
You know what? I've heard this coming out of, I think it was the conservative community.
Yeah, they allow driving to synagogue on Shabbat.
Yeah, my rabbi says it's better to drive to go to temple because at least you go to temple. And I'm thinking to myself, this is the most upside down religion of all time, because going to temple, right,
mm-hmm.
it is not required.
Right.
What is required is not driving the car,
mm-hmm.
right? So the question is, no. The answer is flat out no. All right, go ahead.
So over the long run of Jewish history, many individuals and groups have attempted to retain the beauty of the observance of Shabbat while disregarding the seeming stringent